right. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Maybe we're live, maybe we're not. All right, it says live, it's really real. Okay, fantastic. So, hello, I am Kat Udero, psychic empath and psychic wrangler. Before we see who I've wrangled in today's show, I want to welcome you to Third Eye Salon, where in each and every week, we take a fresh look and a deep look between the veils of reality. And so today we're looking between the veils of Matthew Mournian's multidimensional awakening and the power of our multidimensional awakening and subsequent healings. What he has done, we can also do. So that's sort of the theme. And I'm going to switch us into, I'll remember this time to switch us into the Brady Bunch view so you can see all of us while we do our intros here. Let's say hello to Linda, my friend, psychic conscious business coach, our co-hostess with the mostest. How are you, Linda? I love you.
I look forward to this day all week long, no matter when it happens. I am doing really well. I'm feeling very blessed being with everyone. And I want you to know, if you haven't been here before, that I will be your live stream chat host. And my policy is play nice or get out. So we are always willing to ask, and I love the conversations we have on the side. I just ask you be respectful, because this is a safe place for people to explore. And if you aren't, you're out. So we're going to leave it at that. And as we go through this, it's going to be amazing. And remember to like, share, and subscribe so other people can see this too. And also check out our podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you can't be here, you can be there, and be in our group in Third Eye Salon on Facebook. Love the discussions we have there. You guys add so much to it. So be there on that group. And Matthew, I'm so excited to see you. We've got your information below because people are going to want to see it. So check out the links below. But I'm excited to hear what you have to say today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with y'all. I mean that sincerely. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and we also have a down below in our links are all of Matthew's links, and we have our links, and we also have our donation button down there and also on our YouTube page. So feel free to hit us up. We love the support. It really helps out the show a lot. You don't even know how much it helps us out. So we always are grateful for that. Let's also say hello to Miss Angela Anderson. She is an artist. She is a motorcycle mechanic, a former software engineer, channeler of oneness. Anything she wants to be, she becomes it. Angela, how are you? Happy to see you today.
I'm good this morning. I hope you guys are all well. I'm excited to get into the discussion this morning. I've watched a few of Matthew's previous interviews elsewhere, and I know he spits it out at lightning speed. So I had a shot of Ormus this morning and a cup of tea. So I am ready so I can keep up.
It is for real. Matthew does these he'll say these sentences really quickly. And then each sentence is like, there's like 5 nuggets inside the sentence that you want to crack open and get into.
Right.
So we're going to have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to get into Matthew's bio, and then we'll get into our conversation because we're all chomping at the bit. All right, Matthew Mournian is a professional psychic and multidimensional intuitive healer specializing in the removal of negative energetic manifestations from the body, things like entity attachments, astral parasites, implantations, and many other forms of energetic targeting that are still widely unknown by the modern day world. Matthew uses a multi-part protocol of tarot, spirit guide consultation, elements of traditional Chinese medicine, and direct transmission of life force energy using an extraterrestrial healing modality known as scalar toning that has shown an unprecedented ability to release a variety of physical, emotional, and energetic maladies from the body. In 2019, Matthew was guided to form an intuitive healing training program for expanding multidimensional beings, that would be us, who have chosen to be of service to humanity during this time of great dimensional shift. The School of Multidimensional Intuition was born, and in the time since has grown into a global multidimensional educational project whose purpose is to reawaken the great mystic, ancient healer, and the spiritual warrior within each of us. Excuse me. Whether it be through intuitive consultation, energy clearing, or psychic development, it's Matthew's mission to assist with the liberation of mankind and womankind during this time of great awakening and expansion of human consciousness. So give us a thumbs up if you're excited to hear about Matthew's multidimensional awakening and how we can take what he's learned and apply it to our lives. I'm excited. So give us that thumbs up and let's get going into the conversation. Mr. Matthew, I know you've talked about this on other shows. I saw you on Karen Swain, who I love dearly, and you went into your awakening there. So if you can maybe give us an overview of what that looks like. It was back in 2017, and you had a completely different life and had a different personality from then to now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for summoning me to this strange corner of our multiverse. I'm going to start out today by saying probably the most weirdest and woo-woo thing of this entire broadcast. For those of you guys that are seeking to unlock and understand your own innate ability to use telepathic imaging and telepathic messaging, I'd invite you to stare intently at the left eye. You can just look at my left eye as we speak, as we go through this process here today, and you will be receiving your own internalized slideshow of images, just your own kind of inner kind of story as well. It's a fundamental fact of everything I do, and it's something that everyone here can do as well. And so just to help everyone unlock that. But anyway, to answer the question, I will start by saying I did not plan to be doing this. This was not something that I had any idea was coming in my life, which is awkward because I'm now a professional psychic. I did not see it coming, but I would say prior to the year 2015, I was working in a professional capacity as I guess we could call it a mental health worker or some form of, behavioral counseling archetype, working with veterans. I had what we call a freak crown chakra opening. And I guess I'll just tell the story really quickly. Some of you guys that have heard me before will be like, oh God, here we go. Let's tell the story again. But I was just kind of doing my life and in a whole different, kind of in a different body, in a different area, in a different realm around summer of 2015. And I was at a homeless outreach fair, just working with the clientele within the treatment center. And I had one of those days like everyone has, we've all had it in third density jobs where I was like, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to do this. I'm just going to hide and walk around. And I was walking around this sort of homeless outreach fair, and there was this group of older women there. And one of them looked over at me and said, would you like an energy blessing? And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. Yeah, I don't want to go back to work. Go ahead. I can sit down here. Sure, I'll just sit down on this chair. And this woman put her hands on my head for about 5 minutes, just very silently. And honestly, within 5 minutes, something was very different in my body and in my life. Suddenly it felt like I was wearing a hat, like I had a ring around my head, and I just felt kind of weird and spacey. And I will always remember that moment because immediately after that, I walked over and just stared at this fence out at the city. And I just looked out there and I was like, something is different. Something just happened. I didn't know what it was. And so lo and behold, within about 60 days of that day, my entire life had fundamentally changed. So many elements of who I was, health issues, body changes, literal madness ensued. I wish I could say I was the cool version of the awakening being, but it was pathetic. I literally lost my mind. I was on the verge of checking myself into a hospital every single day for about a year straight. And my life just was altered. After that moment, I started to have visitations. Within days of that, beings started showing up in my room. I started waking up in the middle of the night, feeling my body going through the ceiling, through like a blue portal. And I was completely sober at the time, so I had no understanding for it other than I think I'm losing my mind. And so lo and behold, that continued for about a year and a half. And right around 2017, early 2017, I just started meeting a group of people. And in particular, I met an older woman at a conference I was attending, trying to figure out what was going on in my life. And she was a very well-established professional psychic at that stage of the journey. And I had one of those experiences in this life where someone just looked at me. And they were like, you're a psychic. You're this, you're that. And I had no idea at that stage. I knew something was going on in my life, but I had an experience where someone saw me and viewed an energy within me. And as a result of that, it fundamentally altered my entire life path. Here we are many, many years later, well, maybe 5 or so. and different body, different timeline. And so I'm given the ultra short version of it, not to go on too long, but it kind of coalesced to the point of summer of 2017. I made a choice to walk away from my marriage at the time, my job, the house that I owned, all of the things that I had accumulated for the last 20 or so years of my life. I literally put my stuff on the curb and I drove away. I left a chapter of life behind, not having any idea what was going to happen, because I really didn't. And this weird switch flicked in my life, which a lot of people cringe when they hear it, but I had no training, I had no schooling, I had no previous knowledge of how to work within the energy body or how to, use divination practices. It was like a switch turned on in my life, and suddenly everything changed. And so here we are. It's now 2022, and I find myself on strange shows and teaching people how to do this very thing. So that's the short version. But yeah, here we are. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, when you were going through that and you were experiencing, my sense of it is that you were reconnecting with ET and energetic family members, where they were doing work with you specifically, like, okay, we got to prep him, we got to get him ready. I'm wondering if you had what were the beings that you were connecting with at that time, if you have a recollection of them?
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah, thank you for asking, because oftentimes there's so many fun little elements of this story that I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But during that journey, I would say honestly, within 3 days or so, maybe a week, my concept of time is horrible, you guys. It could be a month and I'll be like, yesterday, you know what I mean? So within a very short time after that initial activation, I started waking up in the middle of the night, like I was saying, just in a really weird state. So many strange things were happening in my body. And in one particular scene, I was actually detoxing really hard. I had been on antidepressant medication for a number of years. I was just a very unhappy individual. I was over 40 pounds more than I am now. I was just in a very different body. And as soon as this crown chakra opening thing happened for me, I just knew it was time to stop everything. It was like, I'm not going to take that medication. I'm not going to take that one anymore. I'm not going to eat meat anymore. I'm not going to do this. It was just like a switch turned on. But as a result, it left me in this state of incredible psychoactive detox. And so as soon as that energy seal was released from the top of my head, I remember within a very short period of time, I woke up in the middle of the night, and over to my left was 3 beings. It sounds kind of cheesy. They were literally cloaked, like in these cloaks. There was a tall one in the middle, a short one on the left, and a kind of medium one on the right. And they just stood there and looked at me. They just stood there. And I the human mind questions many things. And in that moment, I looked over to my left, and there was my grandmother, who had died maybe 2 years previously. And I was shivering and shaking from this sickness. And she reached over and touched my knee, and it went away and it never came back. And it was the detox stage of my life, literally ended like a switch in that moment. And I was never sick again from those medications. Lo and behold, a little while after that, I began doing, meditations and breath work, things that somehow were like brought into my life. I didn't even know what they were. Suddenly I was attending groups and doing all kinds of, crown chakra things, not knowing what they were. And I had an experience, I would say this was in 2016, summer of 2016. I was doing a meditative process known as Ananda Mandala. If anyone wants to look it up, you can check it out on YouTube. And it's basically a breathwork exercise in which you hyperoxygenate the body and move your energy consciously through the chakras. And right as I got to the crown chakra, I did this little mantra, and I felt and heard this pop, or more like a snap. And within that moment, right in front of me was a massive praying mantis being, like bigger than the room that I was in, which is crazy to think that it can be bigger than the room you were in, but it was bigger than the room that I was in. And I just sat there looking at it, just feeling it. And in my mind, I was like, who are you? What is this? Who are you? And there was no answer in the moment, but it was like they were proud of me. It was like this being was proud to see me. And right in that moment, it turned into a boy, kind of like an Indian looking boy. I would say about 14 or 15 years old. He had little red bands around his arms, and he was sitting in the place of that mantis being, just smiling like, like just really, really amazingly happy to see me. And so for me, that was the first conscious extraterrestrial experience that I had had in my life. For days after that, I felt like a residue, like a vibration, like a feeling. It felt like I can move in and out of my body. It felt like there was this velvety kind of wind literally flowing through my body. And at the end of that experience, I remember asking, who are you? What are you? And he said, Ezekiel, Ezekiel, Ezekiel. The energy just went away. And so to me, that was the first sign, or what, you know, in looking back on it now, that was the first intersection or meeting point with what we call galactic family, soul family, extraterrestrial beings that guide our journey. Shortly after that, I began to have dreams where I would wake up in the night once again, and I somehow could view every channel on my body without knowing that they were channels. I didn't even know what that stuff was at the time, but I remember putting my hand on all these weird lines on my arm, and I could feel the channels, I could taste it, I could smell it. I could notice where they went. I could see the intersection points between the organs. And honestly, you guys, that was the worst part of it, because it freaked me the hell out on such a level that I sat there and was like, oh God, what? I didn't know. I did not know what to do with it. And so that kind of went on for months and months. I'll tell one little more fragment of that and then I'll pause. It kind of went to this sort of I guess, apex point, this climactic point in early 2017, in which I was so dissociated at this stage, you guys. The only thing I could do was go to work, come home, and stand in my backyard and do qigong. That was the only thing I could do. It was the only thing that kept me sane. I would just stand out there and just do these movements and breathe. And if I didn't do them, I would be like, I just felt crazy. And there was this one day that I was doing it, and I looked up in the sky. And it's crazy to see this, but it was the face of a lion. And I sat there staring at this face of a lion, and I was like, okay, I'm totally sober. No one's ever going to believe this. I need to go to a hospital. And within moments, there was beings in front of me, around me, behind me. I believe that, honestly, if you want to get technical, I believe that there was some sort of an insectoid being to my right. There was some kind of this light being in front of me. There was kind of what I would call a very large white male, or like what we would call a Nordic being, to my left. There was a whole bunch of other lights, like little orbs that had surrounded my yard in broad daylight, mind you. And I was given this message at the time. I was shown that I could walk away from my life. I was shown that I was going to go through a transition, that I was going to begin an entirely new timeline. And I got down on my hands and knees, and it's always cheesy to think, in broad daylight, on my hands and knees in my backyard, and I'm crying and I'm going, yes, I'll do it. Yes. Okay. And it was a defining moment for me. I've told this story many times, but it was this defining moment, because there I was in my backyard, surrounded by all these multidimensional beings, completely sober, trying to figure out what was going on in my life. And my wife at the time came outside and just looked at me and was like, so what do you want for dinner? And it sounds dumb, but in that moment, I was like, yep, that's it. It's over. We're moving on. And it was like something had been made for me. And so, yeah, that was kind of how the thing started. There's been many since then. I'll keep going on, but yeah.
That's great. Do you have a sense of the lion being? Who's the lion, the big lion, what that was specifically?
I could tell you a little bit about. I believe that the feline beings have many names for us. Some of us call them Lyrian, some of us call them Lyran. It depends on how you want to enunciate the name. But what they are is one of what we would call the guardian races, one of the founder races, one of what we might call a 6th or 7th density energy. That for many of us, we were these beings. We were in contact with them. They were a big force in a stage of what we would call the Lyrian or Lyran wars, at a much earlier stage of our development as beings within this multiverse. And so they're kind of one of the soul archetype frequencies that will reach out to people that will go through particular types of transformations. And it's kind of like viewing one of your most ancient relatives. And they showed up a couple other times for me. I had a group past life regression at the beginning of my journey, which for some people is awkward to do it in a group. I can't say that it worked really well for me, but I had such a powerful experience right before the group started. I laid down on this mat with like 20 people, and before the woman could even do her little induction thing, I looked to my left and there was the lion, and it was very, very old, very old. And for those of you guys that want to get a picture, you'll probably get a little bit of it. He had braids over his mane, had braids. He had scars on his sort of face, incredibly old. He was wearing like a silver and blue sort of outfit. I couldn't really see what it was. It was like a portrait of him. And he looked at me and said, "We are the brothers of Samsara." And boom, bounced. He just vanished instantly. And so lo and behold, I started to research that because I was like, samsara, what does that mean? And what I found was a really powerful reference. I know there's lots of other meanings for it, but what I found, the one that stuck with me, was within the law of one. They talk about the brothers and sisters of sorrow, those who agree to incarnate on this plane to live out the catalyst and the joys, and also ultimately the suffering that they will take on for everyone that comes before them and after them. And so, at the risk of ranting on and on, yeah, those guys have been around. So.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, do you recognize this event that happened as a walk-in experience, some sort of walk-in experience? Because it was so pivotal, like you changed like overnight, almost changing the body, healing the body. And I know that's one of the indicators when a walk-in comes in, they have to change or heal the vessel, the vehicle, in order to move forward into what they've come to do. So.
Oh yeah, I fully agree. I actually learned that a little bit later after that process, that the walk-in journey, or if you want to get technical and start labeling things, some people say there's also what we might call the soul unbraiding process, which another way to describe it is what we would call future self-integration, which was, in my opinion, quite literally what happened to me. You know, I'm sure that after we die, we get a little bit of they'll show us what really happened, I pray. But as far as I can tell, within that moment in 2015, I went through a soul unbraiding process. It was still a lot of the original version of Matthew is still there. Lots of the primary themes in my life still continue, but it was like the real basic fundamentals of myself and my life and my relationships, especially the body, changed dramatically. And so for me, it was definitely a walk-in journey. And the fun thing about it is we are living in an entire generation of walk-in souls, of people that are going to have a very similar experience. Some of us will have them on a very turbulent manner like I did. Some of us will have a gradual unbraiding, but as far as I can tell, that's kind of one of the cornerstones experiences for us as humans, where we can choose to integrate with a future version of ourselves. And as far as I can tell, it's kind of a fact of life for lots of us on the earth plane. But yeah, I have a feeling there's a few walk-ins in this room with us now, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I had a similar experience, although mine wasn't as dramatic as yours. Mine has been more gradual in its progression, but yeah, it's a similar thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a bunch of weird like events and beings showing up, or strange?
Absolutely, but I'm not as visual as you. Mine is more tactile. I can feel the energy. So when you describe that velvety, energetic feeling that comes through, that's how I feel the energy, and I am moved. Like my physical vessel is moved by the energy. So I can sit, and if I go into a state of meditation, I am moved. I don't ever sit still in meditation. Mm-hmm. I am always moved. If I center in the heart, I am moved by that energy. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. For the record, I am not a very visual person either. I have had many experiences where suddenly something opened up as a visual like representation. But what I have come to learn and experience on a daily basis is that the way the third eye really works is, for us, it's an internal viewing device that allows us to view internally rather than what's occurring on the outside. And so for me, when I was in that state in the backyard, while I did see it with my absolute, human eyes up in the sky, when I was sitting there with beings surrounding me, what I came to understand later was that they were viewable to me because I was seeing them within an astral space in an internal manner. It made sense that my wife at the time was just like, "What are you doing? What the hell?" Because for other people, there's quite literally nothing there at all. But for me, it was honestly one of the most realist experiences I ever had. It gave me enough faith in what was happening to go, this is actually real, and I'm actually going to do the thing. And I didn't know what the thing was, by the way, but I was like, yes, I'll do it, So yeah, anyway, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, oh, it was great. What can you speak about? I want to make sure Linda hops in here too, but the Brothers of Samsara, can you speak more to that? Because these are the things that just get me, and I'm like, what? Tell me more.
I would invite everyone that wants to learn a little bit more about it to go to lawofone.info and just look up that word, because there was a period where I did a lot more research into it, and I know that there is an official kind of definition. I know that other people in spiritual practices are very familiar with that term, but for me, it was something that showed up. It was just like, boom, there it is. And so I don't know. How do you spell it? SAMSARA, Samsara. And so I would be speaking out of turn by telling you that I knew a hell of a lot more about it, but my only reference with that term is through Law of One, in which they talk at great length about how many of the beings in this universe will choose to incarnate here in these physical bodies from other dimensions and go through the great forgetting, or the amnesia layer, the process of returning over and over and over again to physical bodies so that we can transmute, we can serve as energetic, emotional, and spiritual catalysts. We are the beings that choose to come back over and over and over again and fight the war, play the battle, be the martyr, do the one that takes that actually goes through the action of mitigating and healing the suffering of human beings. And, when I ended up reading a little bit more about it, I think at the time I was shocked, because I was like, wow, that sounds like a really difficult existence. Why would anyone choose that? Why would you want to be the one that takes all the shit for everyone else? And, granted, there's probably other meanings for it. I might be grabbing onto one little fragment of limited understanding, but for me, I was like, what the, But honestly, it was probably one of the most realist and powerful experiences that I've had. I've had clients since then that have had very similar experiences, where these beings will come in and just say this thing, and you're like, what? And it's like, it takes you years to unpack the true meaning of it. I had another one, at the risk of going on a long rant again. I had an equally bizarre experience December of, I think, 2016, with another one of those Mantis beings. And at that stage, I was really into doing group meditation stuff, because there was just a group of older people in my town at the time, and they were really into me for some reason. I was like 30 years younger than everybody, so they were super into me. And I would just go to these group these group experiences, and at one stage, I remember doing a similar breathwork process. One of these Mantis beings showed up again. He was over to my left. And I just instantly, the human mind kicks in, and I start asking, what are you? What is this? What's happening? Which for me has always been a weird thing to do in those states, because as soon as I do it, we get kind of pulled out. But he looked at me, and it was like he was telling me, you're not ready to talk to me. You're not ready for this. And what he showed me was one of the paths through which many of us enter this realm. Many of us incarnate by passing through the layer of the sun. He showed my energy pass through the sun and break off into like a billion different fractals. And within that moment, once again, I asked him, who are you? What is this? And he said, Atma. And I was in such a state that I couldn't understand it. I was like, what? Amla. I kept trying to like repeat it. And that was when he, I just knew. He was like, you're not ready for this. You're not ready. And boom, they were gone. And so lo and behold, I looked that one up. I was like, oh boy, that means something. I knew it was a Sanskrit word. I didn't know what the hell it meant, but it's the higher self, the embodiment of the higher self. And so I guess I could say maybe, the way my higher self showed itself to me was as a giant mantis being, which was wild. But yeah, so they have been around quite a bit.
Yeah, they totally have. I know where I want to go, but Linda, hop in. Did you have a...
I'm just taking this all in, because I think about, everything I've been told, like for me, is that it's coming this next year. I've had so many people in my life come up to me the way that you've had people come up to you. And there's this little part of me that says, well, what would it have been like if I'd done that then? Like if I had just followed it like you did. But I realized that I'm supposed to be where I am now at this time. And we were talking on the sideline about that, of following you. You've got these different timelines you can choose in this, and people are waking up at all times. Do you have any guidance for people in that process?
For people that would be in the ongoing process of awakening, you mean? Or
yes.
For those that have seen that the like opportunities are cycling through and they're like looking back on things? I guess I'm having trouble understanding.
Well, I guess just all of that, the process of stepping in and being that brave person that steps into changing and following that path.
That's a very good question. For me, I guess it's kind of cheesy and weak, but because I had not planned for any of this, I did not have a basis for comparison. I did not know any better. It was like, for me at that stage of my life, I wanted a lot of it to go away, but I knew something else was sort of changing and something else was coming in. It was like, because I didn't know there was an alternative, I didn't know that I could say no. I just went with it. And because honestly, I was so sick and crazy I just followed everything. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. Okay, I'll go there, anything. And so I think that I'm a very extreme version of that awakening journey. I think some of us will need to have it. But if there's one thing I do know is that anyone that becomes attracted to the subject matter, to the frequency, to the idea, whether they view minuscule changes in their life or they go through a massive transformation like me, as far as I can tell, there is nothing that occurs at this stage of our human life cycle that happens truly by mistake. There are gradated levels in which certain events will take place. Some will be stronger, some will be limited based upon our investment, based upon how much we buy into the process. But a lot of it is inevitable. And yet at the same time, while we have a number of inevitabilities, meaning for some people, the process will go very slow, for others, it'll go quickly, for others, it'll be incredibly turbulent. At the same time, we also have a number of choices. And one of the hallmark experiences of, I would say, beginning in about, 2020 and beyond was that we are in full control of our physical timelines on Earth. And so while there are going to be, inevitable changes that take place, inevitable awakenings, we have a tremendous amount of control in terms of how we engage and what we agree upon happening. And so I would say just by continuing to embody the most authentic version of yourself, which is an easy thing to say, right? Easy thing to say, really hard thing to do on a consistent basis. The more we embody that, the more we allow for the organic process of awakening. But at the same time, I also feel you in terms of your first comment where you're like, I could have this, I could have that, I saw certain things, or I had a different version of this and I didn't necessarily act, or whatever the sort of all of the details are. Once again, none of those happen by mistake. And I think that wherever we are at this stage, whether it's in a turbulence or beauty, these are all catalysts for growth. And so I'm kind of going on a weird loop with that. I don't know if it makes any sense, but nothing happens by mistake, I guess we could say. I hope that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, do you mind if I hop in, Linda?
Not at all.
Okay, because and Angela wants to, okay, we're all so excited to talk to you. All
right, I'll just keep going on and on. You can just be like, hey, wait, like totally interrupt me. Anyway, go ahead.
Running as fast as we can next to you. So the thing I wanted to hear about, because of this, if you can elaborate on the unbraiding of the soul, which to me is connected directly to the DNA, like being able to unwind and activate your DNA. And I say this from an intuitive level, not from a scientific level. I don't, I only have the skills I have, but like on an intuitive level, it feels like there's a unpacking of the DNA and energizing and then a reconnecting of what's been unpacked. And that is where the soul light gets to come in, the greater aspects of the being that aren't bound to the personality. And I'm wondering if there are ways that we can consciously do that. It's kind of similar to what Linda's saying, but a little bit more elaborate on, are there things that I can do? Because I have a very strong personality, which can really get in the way. And, I can loop on certain thoughts and certain beliefs. And I'm like, I know that is not valid, but my emotions are just all up in it. And so that will carry over through the day. And it's like, and part of me knows better, but the part of me is just exhausted and I don't have the wherewithal to like activate that larger aspect that's able to say, let me put that in order for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, and sort of no, but that's okay because I always get really tangential with these things. So I'll just grab onto what I can grab onto. Okay. When it comes to, I guess we could say the action of activating DNA, the way I like to think about it, which may be an incredibly limited and infantile perspective, is I will look at it from, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the double slit experiment where they move some sort of multidimensional particles through this barrier. And they notice that as they move through, they would only move when we observe them. And so I might be once again giving a very haphazard explanation of that process, but just by observing, just by placing attention and awareness upon our DNA, we start to create a change. Along with that comes an intention. And so even if we do not understand the workings or the methods through which things will unpack or which they'll develop, we have absolute ability to alter our path solely through intention alone. Now, does that mean that we're going to be able to kind of muster up enough intention to, suddenly create 12 strands of DNA in our body and immediately switch over to the 12th, dimension, whatever it is? I don't know. But what I do know is that the more we heal ourselves, the more we correct and heal the inner child, the more we embody authenticity, the more we intend to live as those, whatever it may be. To me, those are the most effective things we can do to activate the strands of DNA, through which, as far as I can tell, and not to make it ultra weird, but everyone has ability to visually view DNA within the internal space. It'll take some practice, but you can focus on individual's energy and you can absolutely find it. And what you will find, at least as far as I can tell upon kind of viewing it psychically, is that, in my opinion, there are far more than what we would call 12 strands or 24 strands. It's as though they multiply and develop as we go through this human journey. Many of the strands of DNA will activate through conversations, through healing events, through strange intersections in our life. And what it shows me is that the way in which energy kind of activates in the body comes from so many different sources that they're all kind of interplaying together at the same time. And so I might just be, kind of looping on your thing, but as far as I can tell, just us sitting here right now, intending to understand and unpack this multidimensional experience is also affecting the DNA. When you encounter a person that will be in a different stage of that process, and they'll be in a different kind of vibration, just by joining with them and like connecting with their energy, you will also be receiving it. And so I would say one of the, to try to make it a bit more understandable, I would say one of the ways in which we will notice our DNA activating in this lifetime is through the natural development of psychic and intuitive gifts, which is a fact for every living being that has a soul. I know that's a hard road to go down, but all of the ensouled beings in this planet have the same abilities. Some of us are really good at certain things, just like in school. Some of us were good at math. Some of us were good at sports. Some of us were really good at psychic things, but there's no infrastructure to kind of foster that in our world. And so anyway, I will definitely lose my train of thought, but we all have those abilities. And as we develop them, that's going to be one of your greatest evidences for the expansion of DNA. And so I might have lumped too many things all together.
That's okay. We're going to talk a lot about how we can activate our own multidimensional healing. So we'll come back around. Yeah. But Miss Angela, hop in.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of speak to that, because one of the ways of I guess identifying the difference is recognizing the difference between belief and knowing. So the soul, or the true self, knows. The identity holds beliefs, and those beliefs are what can hinder the expression of the true self within this physical dimension. So being able to hold a reflection of the difference between the two, level setting the two, and when it comes down to it, asking yourself why you've chosen to hold the beliefs that you do. Because once you get down to the nitty-gritty of why you've chosen to hold these beliefs, most of the beliefs become invalid illusions, and you're able to let those go, such that the true self can shine forth unhindered by these beliefs that you've chosen to hold. So really, it's an analysis and a relinquishing of beliefs held, but you have to first be willing to do the work and understand why you've chosen to hold these beliefs that you've chosen to hold. And those beliefs can follow you as a soul. If you've not chosen to address those, they can follow you from incarnation to incarnation to incarnation. This is how you get things that carry forward from previous lifetimes or parallel lifetimes, right? But you have to be willing to do the work to see why I'm holding these certain beliefs. But in that same vein, you have to be willing to acknowledge the true self that you really are. This big multidimensional beingness that knows, that doesn't carry a belief, that seeks to be unhindered by the beliefs that you've chosen to hold. So being able to release those, that's the practical way of moving forward into allowing the true self its expression within this physical dimension. That's the way.
That was so profound, Angela. I really needed to hear that. Thank you. Angela's links are also down below. She's got a bunch of new links that we've got down below. So if you want to check out Angela's work, just FYI, but that was so good. Ask why you believe that. Why do you choose to believe that?
Yeah, and most of them are illusions. All of them are illusions. Everyone that I've gone down the rabbit hole of identifying, they're illusions. And once you realize the illusion that you've chosen to hold based on what you've learned from your parents, picked up from your parents, picked up in school, picked up from other kids, all these things that you've built structures on to establish the life that you've chosen to live. And then you see how insignificant this mask is that you've chosen to wear. Mm-hmm. We've tried to model ourselves after everybody that we've seen throughout life. And that's the problem. That's the issue, modeling yourself after everything that you've seen, but having the courage and the willingness to let that go and allow yourself to be as you've come to be, as authentically as possible, owning that authenticity, having the courage to live and walk in that state of authenticity is what brings you down into this physical dimension to be fully expressed. Yeah.
Great. Applause all the way around.
Thank you. I love the way you articulated that.
She does that every show. She has something where she'll just unpack the fudge out of it. And you're like, okay, get it now. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Matthew, in your healing work that you have done, what are some of the things that you've done as a healer that were shocking to you or educated you, where you're like, oh, I'm doing this process now. Either it's a process that's coming through me, or it's a process that but somewhere within the healing, you've learned something from the person on the table, as it were, because of a different sort of energy implant or a different, things that blew your mind and taught you along the way.
Oh, thank you. That's a good line of questioning, which will open the door to another bizarre rant about ET matters. But I would say the primary technique that I use, I shouldn't say that. It's kind of it is definitely changing. But one of the primary techniques that I've used for the moving, the opening, strengthening, harmonizing of whether you want to call them chakras, meridians, organs, whatever the sort of pathway is through a technique that I call scalar toning. I don't think it actually is called scalar toning, but it is something that I picked up through observation and through mimicry, which for some people is like, what? But this for me, it began in December of 2017. In fact, I almost have the exact day. It was either the 29th or the 30th of December in 2017. And at that stage, I had already, left everything behind and was working in a little psychic shop in Los Angeles. And there was one day there where I had just done like a meditation after lunch. And I was like, I'm just going to meditate here and sit in this little chair. And within seconds, as soon as I closed my eyes, I was transported to an outdoor space. The ground was very red or sort of dark brownish, not necessarily a normal earth color. And in front of me were these three very, very tall, very dark-skinned men. I think one, possibly two of them had reversed joints. They had like reversed limb joints, and they were doing this very strange dance. And they came up to me and blew this matter into my face. And then they built a wall with their hands over my body in this outdoor area. And within that moment, I was taken instantly into what we would call a dwelling or a home or just some sort of a hut where I guess these beings had lived. And over to my right was a child version of these beings laying on like a stone table. And when I looked at him, he had a huge crack on the side of his head. It was glowing, like literally oozing and glowing, like pulsating. And it's important to mention this, but I observed myself. I did not choose to do this. I observed myself walk over to that child and put my hand on its head and move this energy out of its head. Like, it sounds cheesy. It was like a glowing slug. In a weird way, it was like this glowing slug thing came out of his head, and I lifted it up and it disappeared. And within that moment, a sound came out. Technically, the sound started, I think, before. It was like this, like, ooh. The sound started happening, and I released this thing out of my hand. There were some other events that took place in there. I won't go on and on about it, but that was the beginning of me being exposed to whatever this frequency is. And so, lo and behold, I would say about a week or so later, I was in that shop. And at that stage, I was doing a lot of energy clearance. People would just come in off the street and just with all kinds of bizarre things. We had everything from demons to strange entities to, honestly, I met a group of, I think, very legitimate human hybrids that had been hanging out in LA, all kinds of weird stuff. But within that stage, shortly thereafter, I had a person come in And for some reason, I was compelled to make that sound. And it was the first time I ever did it. And I started going, and pulling energy out of people's bodies. And I realized that when I would do that, people would start to shake. And there was these tremors that would occur. And in certain places, I would just aim, I would look at a certain part of the body and just make that sound. And I realized that if I did it on certain areas of the body, people would have an emotional release. In many cases, I came to find out that it was actually the urinary bladder Meridian that I was working with at the time, that when we aim a certain amount of energy into certain places on the back of the human body, you'll create this pop. And if there's trapped emotions in the body, it'll just start to come out. And so what I learned through literally mimicking that experience that I had with these beings was that was a form of technology. And so here we are several years later, and we're teaching it, we're using it. And honestly, it's changing. What I was shown was that it was one of the fundamental ways in which we can send energy multidimensionally through two bodies using what I believe is a scalar wave frequency. And it's changed since then. What they showed me was that you don't actually have to make the sound. But for many of us on Earth, it's what we would call fourth density training wheels. It's a method of transmission that helps train us to use it in a different way. And so that was the primary technique that I picked up from those guys. Ever since then, there's been a number of other things, just a number of little practices and things. But I learned everything in real time doing it with myself, which for some people is a very cringe thing to hear about, because I was not a person that had formal education in any form of healing ever. I have never taken a class on any of those things. I went to like a retreat here and there, put on, by a really good friend of ours, where we would just do our own stuff and do body work and whatnot. But there was really never anyone that I sat down with in a training fashion. Maybe the first woman in the beginning, she kind of showed me a few things about tarot. What she really did was tell me who I was and what she observed in me. And it allowed me to kind of move forward. And so I don't know if that answers your question or pulls it into a weird place, but it's fun to say that everything I do was based off of mimicking some extraterrestrial experience. And so,
Well, I think there's a lot that we could unpack there in terms of the people that you came in that had different attachments and how those attachments showed up. And
oh, yes,
probably I would say deviated personalities appearing as maybe an outside character when maybe it was something from within. But you said alien hybrids in LA, so you have to talk about that now. What was your experience with it?
I'll just go there. A part of me thought maybe they were a group of just really, really interesting female actors. I don't know, because I worked in the area that was literally like 2 blocks away from big studios, just the Hollywood scene. I don't know how I ended up there because I abhor that scene, but I had an experience, I think this was summer of 2017, in which it was like networks of the same type of people would show up. And one group in particular was this group of incredibly tall, incredibly muscular, incredibly strange, and nearly triggering and intimidating women. They were like Amazon women, and they were a group of them. And they came all 3 one day. They all saw me, and then they came back. 2 of them came back later on. And I do not know how this occurred, but in one of the readings or the energy work I did on one of these women, I asked, "How old are you?" And I remember her saying, "Far, far older than you can know." And I just remember going, "Ooh, spooky, weird." And I just kept rolling with it. But right after that, I had a series of what looked like very, very reptilian humans as well. I mean, literal groups of people with same body types and same mannerisms and same issues, same distortions. I had an experience with a man at that stage who came into the shop I was working at, and he wanted to give me a reading, which is always a major warning sign. Everyone comes in there, "I'm here to give you a reading." And it was like, I looked at this man and I could see instantly some weird lizard eyes underneath his eyes. And I was just like, this has got to be too weird. And for some reason I agreed to do allow him to give me the reading. And to be honest with you, it was horrible. Everything he told me was literally incorrect. He told me about a brother I didn't have, about something wrong with my mother that was fundamentally impossible, all sorts of things. But I got to sit there and observe the way whatever it was that was inhabiting this person had a literal desire to influence, had a desire to receive praise, had a desire to kind of extract energy from individuals. And so I got to view that stuff. There was another stage where another kind of giant being came in. This is always kind of a triggering story, but it was I would say about a 6'5" woman. She came in and she explained that she was a being from the angelic realms, and she needed help finding her ship and finding her people. And a bunch of people at the shop saw her. But when I ended up doing a session with her, she explained that she was a walk-in soul that entered the body of a transsexual drug addict in 1998. And she was trying to be released from the body, and she was trying to get out of this or that. And it was absolutely bizarre. It was one of the craziest experiences I had. And a lot of those moments, while it exposed me to a number of, I think, kind of walk-in beings, to a number of maybe hybridized beings, just a real quick kind of detour before I explain that part. What I was told by, this was a man, he was a kind of a Latin American guy, very kind of buff and heavy. He was very similar to what we would call those beings in Star Wars that look kind of like sort of like a Ninja Turtle being, like with tusks, you know what I mean? I think they're called Gamorrean warriors. He was like a human version of one of those. And he started talking about ET stuff in a very laughing, kind of humorous way. And he told me that there were hybrid programs in Los Angeles, and there was this network of group homes in which beings would come and live and have a human experience for a while. And they all knew each other. They knew exactly what it is. He explained how they had a separate doctor. They had a medical person that would help them, that they would spend short periods of time. But he explained it very much like a joke. It was like he was telling me a joke. And I remember sitting there going, whoa, are you one of those beings? You know, I remember just sitting there going, you know, and he just came and went. I'll be honest with you, the energy work I did on him seemed to have no effect. It was like he just wanted to come in and get a weird reading, but there was a bunch of weird intersections like that. But anyway, getting back to the reptilian individual, I think that those energies will be attracted to people who are unlocking the same DNA strands within ourselves, which brings me, I guess, to the final point I'm going to make. I know it's a long one, but we become more alien and more extraterrestrial as we go through this awakening journey. One of the things we'll discover later on in this human journey is that it's not a thing you're necessarily born as, although you have it, it unlocks and develops as we go through this journey. And so the more we embrace it, the more we talk about it, the more we have those experiences, as far as I can tell. And hopefully that made sense, but yeah.
That was a great ride. I mean, like, that's its own book right there. I think that you know, what occurs to me, and this is just speculation because I'm just gonna have a little bit of fun with this, but those three women, they sound almost like inner earth women that are really they're gorgeous. Their eyes are slightly bigger. Like they have bigger bodies, and they're really, you know, they live for hundreds of years. So they sound like,
agree.
Yeah, they sound like inner earth beings from what
It kind of freaked me out, to be honest with me. It was one of the few times where I was definitely intimidated by this group of women. They were so tall and very muscular. And I just like remember thinking, you guys got to be doing some like show around here. You guys got to be on one of these shows. You're probably all on the same show. It freaked me out, honestly. Later on, actually, there was another woman that I had met, I believe, shortly around that time. She was not similar to them, but she had some issue where I had to go to her house, which is a very rare thing. I don't know why I agreed to do it. She was like 80 years old, and I agreed to go there, but she was a model, and she was one of those people that seemed ageless, like literally ageless. And I remember it was like we had a conversation without words that I still do not understand today, in which within that course of that talk, I believe she was trying to show me how she was something other than human, and I was unable to receive it. It was like a bizarre conversation. I had to go to this little one-room house out on like the edge of Malibu and just do energy work on this person. And it was like she needed me to come into her energy field to explain something to me that I did not receive. I couldn't get it. It was like I was unable to receive what it was. But anyway, yes, go ahead. I see a question over there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it wasn't that you weren't able to receive it, but that she's sending it, and when the time's right, you're able to see it.
Probably. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I remember it's funny that you would say see it, because I remember I was sitting there with her and she was sitting on her bed and telling me about her life in France, and she was like, do you see it, with this strange accent? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Anyway, so that'll be this much money, and I guess I should go. And it was like I was consciously aware that there was something that was going like right over my head. It was a trip. Man, there's a lot of stuff like that. There was a guy that had a demon one time, which was honestly, or what I guess we would describe possibly as a demonic entity. It was one of the most powerful things that I've noticed. And I just want to preface this by saying I could not even touch it. It was like nothing I did had any effect on this person. It was a young guy. I think he was about 19 years old, younger Asian kid. And he called in ahead of time and he was like, I have a demon with me. His name is Satan. And I was like, you know, when anytime anyone says that, I was like, oh, really? Okay, come on in, Satan. Really, seriously. I was like, sure, let's see. Go ahead. Come on in. Go ahead. And as soon as this guy came in the room, it was, you couldn't see it, but it was like, there was something with him. It was like something there, and it was heavy and big, and it made me feel sick and nauseous. I couldn't smell anything, but I was just like, ugh. It was like I couldn't talk when he came in. I would try to speak, and I have kind of a stutter anyway, but I was like, I had to push every word out. And it was bizarre because he had explained that he had been doing meth, which is a great gateway if you guys want to get an entity attachment, my Lord. But anyway, he had an experience on meth, I think a couple of years prior, in which some voice came into his head and started asking him questions and making agreements with him. And like a good kid, he followed all the agreements, and something had attached himself to him. And it was cool because it looked like it had given him information. It sort of told him things. It seemed like it like actually helped him in certain ways, but it was creating insanity, and he had been told it was going to kill his girlfriend and his mom and all this stuff. And he had come to the point where he wanted to get rid of it. And so when I encountered this energy, I immediately became egotistical. It was very interesting. When it came into the room, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to rip this thing out of you. I'm going to go over there. And you know how we'll get pumped up in a way. And I went through this whole process with this kid, going through all these, techniques and little things. I threw the kitchen sink at him. And as soon as we were done, it was like he sat there and looked over his shoulder and was like, he started talking instantly talking to this thing again. And it triggered me so deeply. It literally triggered me, that I sent him to a couple other people that I knew, tried to help him. Nobody could do anything to it. But what I realized it was sort of feeling me out. It was a literal sentient entity that wanted to have an experience with a person. And it was like, it was laughing at me. I could do nothing about it. It taught me so much about the nature of ego and energy transference, in that whenever you make that fist and try to force something in there, you will immediately fail. It was like instant failure. And so anyway.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to speak to. It was just showing you, giving you a reflection of you, something you were holding in your own field. That's all that was. Yeah.
It was deeply triggering, actually. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was that the fact that we are multidimensional beings. We carry aspects of many galactic beings in our DNA, right? We carry that DNA, and it's inactive or dormant until we get to a stage where we're ready for it to be activated. And then that comes online. And then our goal or our job or responsibility in that moment is to balance it, to understand it and balance it, integrate it and balance it and all that stuff. So that's kind of what you experience. But I fully believe that those experiences that you had with those entities were showing you aspects of yourself that you had to bring into balance. Yeah.
I fully agree. Yeah.
Hop in, Linda.
So we've had a couple questions around this in our chat, and it comes up a lot. When people are having these experiences, one, how do they know if they feel like they're getting a download? How do they know where that's coming from, and if it's for their highest good, or if it's something like that may or may not be for their highest good in this process? What should they do about it? And then the other part of that is, how do you tell when you get these experiences that it's perhaps mental illness or something that's happening, or is there such a thing as mental illness versus having an experience?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I'm going to grab the last one first, because just the way I work, I'll already have forgotten the first question. So you might have to say that in a moment. But how do we know if it's a mental illness indicator or if there is a supernatural energy? Well, the awkward thing is they're all, as far as I can tell, and I will preface this with, we are all learning this together. Every single human being, we all have a little key to the puzzle. So I might have to be missing some keys on that. But what I have observed is that many of the interactions with spirit will both mirror and also cause and show symptoms of what we would call schizoaffective disorders within the body. And also at the same time, the nature of schizoaffective disorders in the body, whether it's a chemical imbalance or in many cases it's a crown chakra thing, or different, avenues or channels will be open on the body, will both mirror demonic interactions, but they will also mirror other interactions that essentially make the body kind of like an open portal. And so they're both interrelated, they're both interdependent upon each other. But in many cases, I have noticed that for one person, a reptilian implant and an entity attachment is another person's sexual trauma from age 5. They're all kind of one and the same. It's more about how our body chooses to discern, to understand, and what we lend energy to. And so for some people, they will be plagued by traumatic experiences or memories for the entirety of their life, and they may never be discerned as some sort of a spiritual thing, whereas other people will be plagued by some form of supernatural or spiritual malady throughout their whole life that actually is a form of energy that's trapped in the body that will show itself as that. In my opinion, as we learn more about spirituality and spiritual warfare, many of the elements of our lives that were other forms of blockages will start to take the form of those things. And so what I have noticed with clients, because I have had a number of people that have come in, they're like, I have this entity and this thing going on. And, it feels like they're very much in a manic wave and they're going through this process. And it's like the manic wave in and of itself will open doors in the body to attract things. But at the same time, it'll be us perceiving ourselves as that. And so I don't necessarily try to differentiate between any one thing anymore. I don't necessarily immediately try to diagnose implantation or entity attachment. And I guess, even though it's fun to talk about in this now moment, it's not a area that I really dive into. I will look more from a clinical perspective at the channels and the energy centers in the body. And what I've noticed is that if you're able to open them up to kind of release blockages, whether it's emotional, physical, or supernatural, all of those things can eventually resolve themselves. So that might be a really awkward way to articulate that, but I don't necessarily differentiate at this point, which for some people would think that's a really bad thing. They're like, you should know, like you should, be able to figure it out. But I think when we treat the body clinically from an organic perspective of opening up channels and kind of, treating it with a little bit of detachment, it allows us to remove the root causes for whatever that is. And so whether it's a reptilian implant in your sacral chakra or it's, a blockage of childhood trauma, as we treat the channels, the energy centers, and allow for like kind of an emotional release, it almost doesn't matter what it is. And yet I will add one other thing to that, because there's also another side of it. And I've had a number of people like this where I'll think, oh, you're just going through this manic wave. Oh, you're just going through this thing. Let's just open up this channel. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then it doesn't do anything at all. And in many cases, there is a sentient being that's attached. Now, I've also noticed that the people I've worked with that have had the most realist versions of those, they have a very hard time remaining in the session. They have a very hard time even booking. They have a very hard time being present. And so I would say for those that are sitting there going, I think I have an entity kind of messed with me. In most cases, that's a sign that there's just a blocked emotional or mental energy in you. And so anyway, I'm kind of looping on that. I don't know if that answers it or just reiterates the question, but.
Yeah, I think it's just an ongoing question that we've had about this that comes up over and over again, because there is such an either or in our society that I think there's a lot of both in there, and some definite gray area or rainbow area in that.
Totally.
The other question was when you're getting, you said this person made a lot of agreements. When you're getting those downloads or you're getting those agreements, are there questions? Let's rephrase that. Are there questions you should ask? How do you know where you're getting that information from, or those agreements that you're making, that they're for your highest good?
Oh, that's a very good question. I use a process of feeling into the emotional quality, the thought forms, the internal imagery, the sort of external imagery, the nature of the situation in which we relieve it, the sensations in the body in which we receive a certain thing, the layers of synchronistic symbology that appear in my life. In some cases, yes, the human brain will just be firing off strange messages inside itself. And in other cases, yes, we'll have a really open channel and something will come in and speak with us. The really wild thing is, this will be a fun can of worms. There's a lot of negative beings within our realm that will give you really good advice and will give you really good true things, and that will, in certain cases, will actually help you. And there's a lot of other what we would call higher dimensional beings that come from a place of true intention, and they will seek to help, you know, the human experience, and they'll come in and create an equal amount of chaos. It goes both ways. And so I would look into the nature of the information one receives. Look into, for me, most importantly, how do I feel when I encounter this energy? What does it feel like? What sort of agreements is it making with me? What quality of emotion does it bring in? Now, for some people who really lean into this world, they will realize that there's a number of multidimensional beings that will carry an incredible false light frequency, and they'll dazzle you and make you feel this thing. And so relying on your feelings is not necessarily a thing that you can always do, but I would say check into the quality of that information. Look at what it's asking of you. Look at what it's giving you. Look at the results that you experience in your life upon pondering it and reaching into it further. If there's an action that's involved with a certain piece of advice or a download that comes in, look at what it is. You know, play the tape out. What sort of thing would this cause? For me, in the early stages of the journey, I think that I was blessed in some way, because whether or not it was some negative service to self being that was talking to me, or whether it was a host of angels from heaven itself, whatever it was, the advice and the directions that I received, the ones that I followed implicitly, that I really took to heart, every single one of those has led to a path of expansion and healing for me. I might be an anomaly, and that I do not believe I've had too many traumatic experiences in there. I've noticed that, at least with me and the sort of negative energetics, most of them will come in the form of influences, urges, desires, things that will pull us away from our path. So, you know, at the risk of going on and on that one, I'll just reiterate: look at the emotional quality and the feeling you receive upon receiving that information, and then notice if it's reflected anywhere else in your world. You know what I mean? See if it shows up. See if you get a confirmation. Write it down. Don't necessarily act upon it. I was raw, because in the beginning I was like, you say this, okay, I'll do it. You know what I mean? I was so crazy that I kind of rode the, you know, that sort of ride all the way out. But I hope that helps. I hope that gives a little bit of clarity. Feel free if you want to ask more on that.
Yeah, that was great. That's like a masterclass in itself of going through this. We did have some follow-up questions from some of our group that what part of meridians and clearing those channels would that play, or is it mostly in the chakra? And then also, what can we do to strengthen our subtle energy perceptions?
Just do one at a time for him. Just give him the first. Just give him the first one.
And then first one.
Okay.
First one. Meridian.
So yeah. Thank you. And watch out. I would say the cornerstone of the work that I do in the classes we teach is on understanding and opening and just learning about our internal infrastructure, the energy body. And so I've said this a million times, it's kind of a spiel, but for those of you guys that want to learn how to create an immediate reaction, an immediate release, how to fundamentally alter the flow of the human energy body in a really quick way, in a way that can bring healing, both spiritual, mental, and physical. In my opinion, the number one system for humans to learn right now is the Meridian system, the 20 meridians. Of which actually there's more than 20, and we're discovering that there's what we would call galactic or multidimensional meridian structures that are extending out of the body right now. The meridians for me have been the most powerful avenue to release blockages in the body. Yet at the same time, I have to say, the chakra system is equally valuable. What I've noticed is there's a differentiation between the chakras and the meridians. The chakras will carry what I would call more karmic energies, more life themes, more ancestral energies. We'll move through the stages of the chakras in varying degrees throughout this human experience. They just healing them alone and working on, arranging and sort of, helping the flow and the rotation of those will have tremendous effects, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and yet they're also changing. Along with the fourth density shift, we're developing new chakras in the body. We're starting to activate external chakras, which is a very, very powerful thing. That's where we start to connect with energies outside of us on a different level. And so the chakra body is incredibly helpful for activation, for karmic healing, for ancestral healing, for opening up abilities within the body, and a number of other things. What I found is the meridians, while they do much of the same thing, they carry a much more immediate response in the physical realm. Meaning you can think of the chakras like some form of a multidimensional, what's the word I'm looking for? System. And you can think, that's not the right word, I don't know who is pulling that one out. And you can think of the meridians like the circuitry that wires the internals of the body together. And the fun thing is they're joined in a number of areas. One of the things that's happening with the fourth density changeover right now is that we're discovering that there's places in which the chakra system and the meridian system join together. When we start treating those areas, we can create a huge fundamental shift in people's identity, their life paths, their abilities, their physical healing, their emotional healing. So I guess we could say that the key is learning how to treat both in the right order. Not that there's a right order for any one being, it's individual for each of us. But anyway, just real quickly before I pause on that one, where are the places that people's chakra system and meridian system are sort of fusing together? One of the most common ones is at the bottoms of your feet, at a chakra known as the Earth Star chakra, which connects directly to the kidney meridian. What does the kidney meridian do? It feeds the body with vital life force energy. It moderates aging. It moderates chi flow. It moderates so many things in the body. And so one of the things that happens with the Earth Star chakra, what does that do? That's what we would call your timeline plug-in point, where the physical and non-physical earth body connects with the non-physical grid. And so down at the bottoms of your feet is very, very important for not only altering and solidifying your understanding of reality, but the ways in which we are influencing reality. And then along with that, one of the other places where the chakra and the meridian system are joining is in and around the head, up at the crown, in the back of the head, along the pathway of what we would call the governing vessel and the conception vessel, the primary central channels in the body. The crown chakra is what we would call kind of crystallizes at a certain state, and it starts to hold a little bit of a different frequency. And from what we can tell, that's because of an expanded flow of energy that moves through the meridian. So when we treat the crown chakra now, we're also treating the central channels. Now, just real quickly, why would you want to treat those? For those of us that are experiencing multidimensional downloads, for those of us that are moving in and out of flow states, for those of us that are learning how to channel, for those of us that are starting to pick up light language, the crown chakra and the central channels are cornerstones for that. Unless those things are working and operating, it will fundamentally block us from receiving a lot of other frequencies. And so that might have been a tremendous mouthful, but just by learning those systems alone, you can change everything in the human body. So.
What was the next question, Linda?
I'm just soaking all that in. I'm thinking
Right.
of all my
I know that was a lot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm really thinking of all of the Jin Shin Jitsu classes that I took.
Totally. Was it the 20 to 23 something safety energy locks or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely.
And how much I could feel that move, that energy, and unlock those meridians.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. Okay, second part. I'm still just like, oh.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, the second part was how can we strengthen our subtle energy perception? I have been detoxing my gut and have seen benefits. Any other suggestions?
Yes, absolutely. And don't worry, this is a much more simple one. If there's a lot of people know it, I'm going to say people that know me, they're like, here he goes, he's going to talk about it again. But if there is one thing that you can do, if there is one thing that I did in this life that absolutely altered my ability to feel, to receive, and to use non-physical energy, it's something that you can do for free, literally every day, all the time, qigong. For those that are willing to begin a practice of qigong in this life, I'm going to make really crazy claims. Here we go. Not only will you stop getting sick, not only will you reverse age yourself, but you will start to develop what we would call an external energetic musculature that will allow you to feel, to view, to experience physical energy in ways that right now you might believe are impossible, that many of us have not felt or not discerned up until this point. There are quite literally people living in other parts of the world, like we could say, China as one of them, although it's a well-kept secret, that are well over 200 years old, that are still in physical bodies on the same incarnation, that are able to regenerate organs in their body, that are able to to just alter the flow of human energy in ways that are absolutely magical. And anyone can do it, literally anyone. Me doing qigong absolutely changed my life. And it's one of the things that I tell people in every session, where I'm like, here's the one thing you can do, and it's literally free. And a lot of people wonder, well, how do I start? What kind of qigong should I do? There's all kinds of forms and schools and teachers. Here's what I did. I just went on YouTube and I started looking at easy qigong routines. And what I would do is just look at a person and be like, well, that guy looks okay. I think I can do that movement. Their energy seems cool. Who cares what it is? I'm just going to do it. Because in my opinion, it's not the school or the type or the process, or even if you do it wrong, it's the intention and the act of beginning this path. And for those of you guys out there that are willing to take a 30-day stretch of your life and devote yourself to doing a qigong routine every morning for 30 days. If you can't do it in the morning, you can do it at night. By the time you're halfway through that 30-day period, you will already have changed to the extent that you'll realize, like, whoa, I actually want to do this. I realize I'm looking forward to it, because it will change you. And so qigong, that's the one. There's others, but that's what I use.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's
just,
we're getting such good information right now.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback on that one. Just to say that in addition to qigong, because I'm a big advocate of qigong. That was one of my go-tos coming through, opening up as well. But to piggyback on that, it's really about getting centered in the breath and getting into the heart space and establishing that familiarity with what it is to be in the heart space, to reside in the heart space, because it's difficult to know what you are connecting to when you aren't familiar with the self. When you aren't familiar with how your own heart feels, how your own heart space feels, what it is to be in that space of knowing, in that space of the heart. And one of the best ways to get there is centering via the breath, in a state of meditation. Now, if you can take meditations in multiple ways, right? But it doesn't have to be sitting for extended periods of time. Meditation can just be a centering pranic breath, that deep breath to get you into the heart space. A stillness, once you get into that heart space, that still point is you, the awareness of the self, the knowing of the self. So it's a practice of getting familiar, a willingness to choose to get familiar with being in that space. And it's from that space that you know to which you are connecting. So you aren't operating in a haphazard way, allowing yourself or opening yourself up to connection with anything and everything that's out there, because literally energy will meet you where you are. Frequency will meet you wherever you are. So if you are pissed off, as I always say, if you are pissed off, you're gonna get a pissed off match, that's in resonance with that pissed off state of being. But if you can get yourself into the place of the heart, and the only way to get to that place of the heart is through practice and understanding what that heart space feels like, so that you can have an adequate gauge to know where you are and to whom or to what resonant frequency you are connecting to. That's your way of knowing. That's where your power lies. You have power to dictate to whom you connect, to what you connect to. You control that. That is within all of our individual ability to control within ourselves. We don't have to operate in a haphazard way. You don't have to have fear of opening yourself up to connecting with energies that are out there at all. There is no fear. There should be no fear. You have the power to dictate to whom you control, but you have to be familiar with what it feels like to be in that space of knowing, which is that space of your truth, the true self. Yeah.
Just to piggyback on that, it sounds like it's really more important to get to know yourself first before getting to know other entities. Like if you clean your house, know your temple, and that way when someone approaches your temple, you'll know whether they resonate to your vibe or not, is how I would, yeah. Well, I was going to ask, did you have something else, Linda?
We just had a question of Tai Chi versus Qigong, if there's a difference in how they affect.
Oh, that's a very good question. I'll be really honest. I have not practiced any other form of internal or external martial arts. And so I have definitely watched those doing Tai Chi and other forms. And I think it is equally as powerful. I think it will open you up and generate very similar, if not, different and equally as powerful frequencies in the body. I I kind of have stayed within the avenue of what works for me and what was shown to me. And so Qigong has been the method I use. Breath work is incredible. Yoga in and of itself as a dedicated practice will open up many of the same channels. It's funny because I feel like I'm being led to begin practicing that at this stage of my journey, which feels kind of old for me. I'm turning 45 this year. And so I'm like, am I supposed to start doing martial arts training? But it's like some energy keeps coming in and it shows it to me in my head. So I'm like, I think I'm supposed to learn another side of it. So, yeah, I don't have much training in anything other than Qigong. And when it comes to training, I have none in there. Everything that I have learned and done has been through observing and through trial and error in my own experience. And I think those that really absorb that, inevitably, you'll start making your own version of everything. And to me, that's the most powerful one you can use. But
Yeah, I think that's well said. There's a synergy at a certain point where you unlock what works for you and you build your own school of alignment.
totally.
I wanted to talk to you about organs, body organs, and how they have chakras, because I'd heard you say this on Karen Swain, which I had never heard of before. And so how do you know that organs have, like my kidney, my spleen, or my heart, how do you know that they have their own chakra systems, and why is this important?
That's a good question. How do I know? That's the funnest one, because I have observed and felt and noticed the effects of the directional momentum of the organs in ways that, whether it was there before, whether it wasn't there before, over the past couple of years when doing energy work and sort of viewing, especially the spleen right now and the liver are incredibly active. And what we find is that there is an energy center that develops as we go through the dimensional shift in each one of the organs that allows them to work on another layer of frequency. And for those of you guys trying to understand the nature of the dimensional shift that's occurring, is one of the simplest ways to understand it is like there's an extra layer of every moment, every interaction, every conscious being, every structure in this world. When we enter fourth density, we receive another layer. And so within the organs, there's another layer of energy developing and working. Some people would call it part of the luminous egg, or the layer of energy that surrounds our organs, but it operates very much like a chakra, like an energy center. You can move energy in a directional pattern through it. And one of the things I observed the first time was really with the spleen, because I had observed a guy that kind of taught me a lot in the beginning. He had done some work on someone's spleen right there with me, and he was trying to help her with a allergic thing. And what I observed was that he somehow was able to move energy in and out of the spleen, like almost backward and forward, like whoop, whoop, whoop. And this person started sweating and gagging instantly. And in that moment, I noticed, okay, there's a directional quality of flow that affects the spleen. And if we move energy this way or that way, what does that mean? And so I started working with it in my own way. And I would say this was in 2019. Here we are in 2022. And we've been given direct, what I call capsule phrases, which is similar to a mantra, but it's an actual utterance that you can use that will help us move energy through those pathways. And so the spleen takes on a little bit of a new role in the multidimensional space. It becomes an avenue for transmuting and holding on to and processing emotions of other people, emotions of yours. It's one of the things that also affects immunity in the physical body and a number of other things. But the spleen begins to develop on a different level, as does the liver when you get over on the right side of the body. What I observed in my own body and other people's was that the liver had a multitude of pathways or doorways on it, almost like we had a front door and a back door to the liver. And so that's another one that seems to be activating really heavily. Another incredibly active chakra center that will be tied to an organ is the thymus, or what some people call the high heart chakra. And for those of you guys developing your empathic abilities, which if you're wondering what is that like, well, a lot of us had the experience as children or as adults where you don't even have to see a person's face. They'll walk in the room and you'll feel instantly, you just know, you're like, ooh, or whoa, you know, whatever it is, you'll feel that. And so for many of us, that's a sign as that gets stronger that the thymic chakra is activating. And as that one activates the chakra, you'll start pulling in other people's emotions. You'll start pulling in other people's thought forms. And unless we're able to clear it and utilize it and start working with it, we get stuck with other people's stuff. When we do clear it, we find that we have a much more clear ability to connect with people's emotions. But anyway, before I go on that one, to get back to how do I know it's there? Because it's a thing that I have observed. And also I have observed that when we move energy directly into those organs, people experience changes. They experience results. It's not always what we're hoping for. And I also got to be real. Does that mean that there's a chakra there? Let's be real. Not necessarily. I might view it as such. I might encounter it as such. It could be something entirely different, but it does seem to mimic and operate very much like a chakra, an energy gateway, a passage point of some form of energy. And so I hope that answers it. That might be a little too much again.
No, that's good. Because I was just wondering, is it like, does the liver have 3 chakras within it? Is it just one chakra? Is it, you know, like, does my heart have 5 chakras within it? Or is it just one, you know?
That here's one thing we can note about the heart. The heart has a different frequency in the front and the back. There's a really cool modality known as pranic healing, in which they have very, very dedicatedly charted the movement, the directional movement through the chakras. And what we've discovered is that upon moving energy into the front of the heart with a specific type of intention, it allows us to feed and strengthen the human energy field, while moving energy out of the back of the heart, like you can imagine, allows you to leave something behind you. It allows you to release something. The spleen's very much the same way. We'll pull in from the front and will release from the back, almost like it's an exhaust tube on a certain level. And so, yeah, the heart has an incredible multipolar kind of element to it that it very much matters what direction you sort of move energy through it. But I also have to say, for those who might not know that, for those who haven't heard that, it does not necessarily mean that you're going to be doing it wrong. If you didn't know that it's better to push this way or that way, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with doing it another way. It means that there's additional frequencies and layers of interaction that we can take place in. And when you put a directional intention upon those energy centers, you can receive just a totally different experience. The third eye is another one of them. The third eye opens not only in the front, but also in the back of the head into a very important place that a lot of people have heard me talk about, known as, some people call it moon portal, Bindu chakra. I've heard it also referred to as mouth of God, which I think is lower down on the back of the head. But those are basically extensions of the third eye structure in the front of your head, kind of like a little tube that needs to go all the way through. You might imagine, in order for whatever is viewable through that little tube, you would need both sides open so that light can actually pass through it. It's one of the reasons why some people have a hard time opening the third eye. But anyway, yeah.
Well, no, speak to the moon chakra, just because I think that's what Linda has, because her chakra, she feels it on the back of her head. Like, people are talking about your crown chakra being on the top of your head. She feels hers on the back of her head. And I'm wondering if that is the moon chakra.
It could very well be. Some people call it moon portal or Bindu chakra. As far as I can tell, and I think it's going to be a little bit different for everyone that opens up there. That's one of the sort of points that opens on the body that will facilitate channeling and the direct dissemination or speaking of words from the body. And so I started noticing that would happen with clients. I noticed that it happened with myself. I'm not a person that's really into light language, but I remember going through an experience where I could feel energy coming in the back of my head, and I started just speaking in a light language at the time, which does happen every once in a while in my sessions. But what I also noticed, and this could be wrong, it's a kind of a theory that I've been playing with, but that opening in the back of your head is very close to an area within the brain known as Wernicke's region. And it's been theorized that Wernicke's region is responsible for the words that you choose, the way in which you will verbalize certain things, the way in which you choose the words, and sort of they're sort of emanated through the body. And so it's almost as if there's an opening in the back of the head that directly affects Wernicke's region. Now, in order for you to accurately speak or release that energy, it has to interact with another place, I think more up in the front, that people call Broca's region. And so those are two of the places in the physical human brain that have been theorized to kind of allow speech centers to activate. So it stands to reason that if energy begins to stream into one of these portals in the back of your head, it's going to allow for a different level of language transmission in the body, or almost like people will start speaking through spirit in a much different way than they did before. So you probably have that ability if you're feeling it.
Yeah, that was actually, my clients would tell me I was doing that, and I didn't even realize it. So yeah, they'd say, that weird thing that you do when you look through us and then you say something really profound, that's what you should be doing. It's like, what? Wait, what? I do what?
Yeah, I have observed that.
But the whole time you've been talking, my whole background has just been vibrating like crazy.
That's a really good sign. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
I have a quick question. So given all the work you do with chakras, I was watching a video not too long ago on Lemurian. It's called the Lemurian Codex is what it was about. But eventually they got to a point of talking about the changes in the chakra system and how the old colors, or those related to the 3D, would be changing. Yep. And those chakras would be changing and being used in different ways. So like the third eye, right now we use it to see, as a point of seeing. Whereas when we move to this elevated or radiant light body, that the third eye would be more directed to radiating out, yep, like emitting light. So I'm curious to know if you've seen those changes reflected in the work that you are doing.
Oh yes, definitely. I'm not familiar with the Lemurian Codex, but that very much goes along with what I have been shown. I guess to go back to the idea of the third eye, yes, absolutely. I believe that it becomes less of a viewing apparatus and much more of a transmission element. And this is a thing I've observed in myself and others, even within the people here. Literally, all of you guys have it as well. And other people talk about it as well. Some people call it the pineal rays, which this will be a weird offshoot, but honestly, I don't think the pineal gland has as much of an effect on viewing psychically as we think it does. It's one part of a whole infrastructure. But yeah, as the third eye begins to activate, or at least what I've observed, is there's actually two that seem to develop. There's one kind of right on top of another, and they sort of fit within the sphere of energy. And so there's two kind of lens things there. But in addition to that, as it sort of activates, a ray starts to come out from the front, from the back, and also from the sides, what we might call above the ears, or just from the sides of the head. And those seem to interact with external chakras that exist for each and every person here, but they don't necessarily activate until we're cognizantly aware of our journey as an awakening being, and we're starting to actively use this energy. And that's where we get into what some people would call causal chakras, which to me is kind of a weird term. I don't see them. I don't even know what causal means, but what I have observed is that they are part of a transmitter, part of an activation that takes place as the energy centers in your upper chakras open up. The causal chakras start to move outward from the human body. And at a certain stage, they begin to orbit around the outside of the head. We have numbers of depictions of that in ancient artwork, shown as the halo, which is also an example of the open crown. But it also has a lot to do with those causal chakras. So what would happen when your causal chakras begin to activate? We start to transmit the energy of the third eye and the energy of what we perceive internally, externally on a much different level. It's part of what I call the social memory complex, the stage that we're in right now, in which everything is known, everything is apparent. Every element of energy is being communicated and spread throughout the universe. And for many of us, we start picking that up when these rays begin to develop for everyone. And yeah, anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or kind of makes it weirder, but
it's just fascinating. Each thing is like a door into another room that has another 5 doors in it. So it's just like this ongoing journey. Real quick, I wanted to say, like, so I'm spleen free, and I have been since 1999. That was I was in a natural disaster, which is a whole other story. But so they had to remove my spleen, and I did have a shamanic healer energetically return the spleen to me on an energetic level. But I just wanted to ask how that affects people. If people have like missing or partially missing organs, how does this energy work impact that when something's gone?
And that's a really good question. I've also worked with people that have had the spleen and the gallbladder. Actually, the gallbladder a lot. For some reason, I get a lot of gallbladder people energy, and I have a lot of gallbladder energy as well. But what I have observed is that even if the physical version of that organ has been released from the body, there is still the energetic version of it. There's still a spleen channel. There's still a gallbladder channel. I've had people that have had the kidneys in their body are actually not in their back, they're in the front, which is weird. I'm like, but it was just a fact. The guy was like, yeah, my kidneys are in the front. It's a fact. And so, in fact, one was on top of the other. Literally, his kidneys had been arranged so that one was on top of the other in the front of his belly. And that was just a bizarre thing. But we observed that the channels are definitely still there. Some people do believe that if the physical organ is removed, that while the human body still works, obviously, right, still works just fine, but that in some cases there will be a more heightened need, or maybe just a greater need to clear that channel itself. Which, if you're wondering, what would it be like when your spleen channel gets kind of blocked up? Well, you get clogged up with other people's emotions, you become lethargic, your body may hold on to fluid, you may have just a hard time getting going, you'll get stuck in this sort of kind of depressive, fatalistic idea of yourself. It just kind of weighs people down. Not that everyone who doesn't have a spleen is going to experience that, because you don't necessarily feel like that type of an individual, but for those that will get spleen blockage there, you might get a little bit more of a taste of that energy, because possibly there's not a physical organ moving as well. But I like to think of it on a case-by-case basis, because I had worked with a person that had no gallbladder recently, and it was as if nothing had changed in their life. Everything was great. And so, in fact, there wasn't even a lot of energy in the gallbladder channel. Not that I would be able to accurately discern such a thing every time, but it felt as though they were operating on a really, they were just operating very well. They had other stuff going on, but so I'd say in some cases it's a big deal. For other people, it's not. But one thing we do know, the human body just keeps rolling. It'll keep rolling regardless. So,
yeah, it's very adaptable. It's amazing. Something you had said on Karn's show, when we were talking about organs and chakras, you had talked about powers that want to shut down the organ chakras. If there's, can you elaborate on that? Because I mean, if you look at our food, our dietary, our stuff that's put out there as food that no one should be eating, the things that are in the air, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just wondering if that relates to it. And what do you know about the powers? Who are the powers that want to shut down our organ chakras, and why?
That's a very good question. I should definitely watch back that interview. I'd love to know what I said again. I'm like, oh, right, I was talking about that. Whoa, okay, cool. I think that there is an implied and a direct kind of a process through which the human body is systematically poisoned and dumbed down through the additives in food, through the weaponized food, through our own emotions. I think that part of our journey here on Earth is that we get to experience both the light and the dark. It's not about eradicating either one. It's about coming to a balance in between the two of those. And so, I think that there are many powers that would wish to dampen the human spirit and bring it into a state of control. One of the biggest ones right now we know is the forced inoculation on the earth plane of, whatever this is that everyone's taking. And also another version of that is the way our beliefs and our emotions are being hijacked by certain world events to create a reaction. And so what if we lived in a time on Earth where the human body was so powerful that if you could make it believe a certain thing or alter the chemical and physical makeup to such a level that we would all just agree to manifest certain things? I think that that's what's going on. And whether it's some multidimensional being, whether it's humans on Earth working with good intentions, not realizing that they're fundamentally destroying channels in the human body or blocking everything up, it doesn't really matter. Whether it's a demon or whether it's a human being, I think one of our experiences here on Earth is that we're gonna have that. And so why would they want to shut those down, though? To kind of shut down human consciousness and to further delay the inevitable awakening process that's been viewed through a number of avenues, whether it's technological, through looking glass technology, or through just what we view and experience in our own lives. We're coming to a stage of inevitable activation, a tipping point on Earth where all of the hidden knowledge, all of the, the layers of things that have been eclipsed and placed upon us are becoming more and more visible. So it stands to reason that whoever the network of controllers are, they're going to want to delay that as long as possible. And if they can cause us to eat as much shit as, like as we can get in our system, we'll become dumber and slower and fatter, and we won't care, and we'll buy into their dictated version of a reality. And so anyway, that might just be me ranting on that, but yeah, sources are many. So.
I have a resonance with that. And then on that thing of the awakening, this is something that you and Karin talked about, that I was like, what? What is the psychic internet that's already happening? And how can I log on? Where's my password?
Oh, you're definitely there already. You are definitely there. And I guess to kind of go into that, that is the wave of fourth density human technology through which we are all interacting on a 24-hour-a-day basis, whether it's in our dreams, whether it's in this now moment. I promise you that even within this now moment, there's a different conversation happening between all four people on this screen. Everyone is receiving a different fragment of this energy, and we're all sharing it with each other. So what we would call that psychic internet is something that has been very much with us since the beginning of time. But in this life cycle, we are learning to connect with it. And so I would say by continuing to heal your emotional body, by continuing to heal the inner child, by continuing to recognize your abilities within the eyes of others, you're going to be continuing to connect with it. And also by detoxing. Heavy metals are one of the most damaging things to your natural psychic abilities, as are, I hate to say it, antidepressant medications. Anything that kind of inhibits or kind of moderates that element of your energy body as well is going to directly dampen your psychic abilities. Does that mean that those who take those type of medications are not going to be able to operate like that? No, not at all, but it will be dampening a certain level of it. And so I like to think we're already plugged into it. And I make a weird, awkward promise for many of us that are able to hear these words and those that are present in this now moment. By the end of this human life cycle, you will have realized that most of the conversations and the energy shared between you and others was entirely telepathic. It's part of one of our journeys in this human life cycle to unlock and further develop that. And so even if you might not be feeling it now, I promise you, you're a part of it. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but you're already on the psychic internet.
Well, it's just that I know that when you two were talking, there was this thing about how the kids are, doing that where they're connecting to each other, and, as opposed to going on Facebook, they're doing this telepathically, where they're showing up and they're sharing information and they're having these conversations. So they're doing what we're doing in the physical. The kids are doing it consciously. It's a conscious interaction, which is different. Like, yes, I'm connected, but it's a difference between being consciously engaging somebody and then happens versus happenstance.
Oh, totally. I would say that ability for children right now, especially those under age 6, is going to be so much more enhanced than it was probably when all of us here were age 6. Not that we didn't have it then, but I think part of that's due to the climate on Earth, due to the frequency changes, due to the quality of souls that are now entering this Earth plane. We could even say that all of the great masters, all of those great historical figures, all of those things are frequencies that not only we carry within us, but they're returning to the Earth plane. So, a lot of the kids right now that are interacting and just working with that energy in a very natural way, they've done this time and time and time again on levels that a lot of us haven't. And I think that's just because that's needed right now. I think it's part of the game. I think as we go through these massive ascension journeys, everyone comes back. Everyone's trying to get back to Earth right now. Some people have to audition to get here. We weren't supposed to show up, but we made it anyway. I think I'm one of those beings. But yeah, so anyway, I might just be twisting off on that one, but I think it's a fact that we're going to change in the coming years. So
I like to think that you did a little soft shoe. You're like, I got some soft shoe. I can juggle what can get me into the Earth plane at this time.
Okay.
Was there any other questions, Linda? Because I was going to shift it. We have 15 minutes left ish.
Oh gosh, we're going to have a part 2. Just so you know, Matthew, everybody's asking for a part 2.
Oh, good.
You never know. We'll make it happen. Totally.
Yeah. And the only other thing, we've got all kinds of questions from vitamins to a lot of other things, but we're going to get mine in there because we hear this again too, which is, you mentioned being exposed to all these external things. How do you cleanse that from your body? What's the best way somebody can cleanse some of these things that are hitting us from all directions?
Oh, very good question. Detoxing has been a really big part of our journey for the past year. My wife and I have kind of a multidimensional training program that we've been doing for a while now. We're taking a break from the second one, and we're going to start another one, I think, in June. But one of the first things we do in this process is go through a dedicated heavy metal detox. And so when I say heavy metal detox, what are we removing? We're removing heavy metal particulate matter from the layers of the physical body and the non-physical body. Things like aluminum, barium, strontium, add any other name to it. We're breathing them in constantly. They're coming in our food. And one of the things they do is create somewhat of a biodigital layer, or they attach to the biodigital layer within the brain, which there is literally a biodigital layer in the brain. It's a bizarre thing, but it's made up of what we would call brain glymph, which is the liquid that resides within the brain and the skull. There's like a liquid layer there that's incredibly, incredibly conductive. And so as we continue to build up heavy metals in the body, that has an incredibly negative effect on your consciousness, on your brain functioning, on your abilities. And so detoxing heavy metals is important. People can take a number of things. The fun thing about detoxing these days is everybody's an expert and everybody has a thing that works for them, and it's more important about what works for you. But what we use is a thing called liquid bentonite to clear the intestine so that we can really activate the gut-brain axis of the second brain in your body. And so clearing the pH imbalances within the intestines are incredibly important. Bentonite's helpful for that. Diatomaceous earth is helpful for that. Zeolite is helpful for that, with the most important thing being really incredible hydration, because if you don't hydrate properly within that process, it'll actually make it worse and clog you up worse. And I've also experienced that. So there's that. There's a thing called fulvic acid, FULVIC, not folic. Fulvic acid that will help oxidize it. As far as I can tell, it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier in your body and it begins to oxidize the layers of buildup around your upper chakras. And so that will help release heavy metal from the brain, as does a number of other things. The list goes on. And I always forget a number of them. Iodine is very helpful. Cilantro extract is very helpful. Liquid silica has been an incredibly helpful thing for those of you guys that are trying to create just an additional layer of connectivity between the crystalline structures in the body that will allow you to feel energy better, that will allow you to be just in more harmony with non-physical energy. Silica is very, very important. And I say just, take them as you feel guided. Understand that probably one of the most powerful ones for me has been the parasite detox, which is a hell of a journey if you haven't done one, everyone. There's a number of things you can take in that regard. Wormwood, black walnut, there's a number of mixtures and kind of blends. And I would say parasite detox and heavy metal detox are going to be the two most helpful things you can do to restore balance. And not to say they're easy, because parasite detox gets very weird and very emotional, especially if you're doing it right. You'll feel sick and crazy, and that's just how it goes. But I hope that answers some of it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so I guess this is probably a good time for people to know about what because this is a lot of content, right? And if people want to connect with you directly, this would be a good time for you to talk about how to do that.
Yeah, totally. You can find myself and my wife, Nora, who does a very similar process as me. She's much more astrological and she uses astrocartography and astrology in ways that I don't. I'm probably the least astrological professional psychic in the world. I'm all body systems and entirely empathic, multidimensional energy related. People tell me their birth dates and I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. Anyway, it's like, I don't even know, but you can find us at rememberyourmission.com. Kind of the heart of what I do is individual sessions. I've noticed a lot of healers try to branch away from that and they'll go into, just doing speaking classes. But for me, I know that one of my missions right now is connecting with people individually and transferring and opening up energy centers in the body. So we do a lot of individual sessions, which are bookable at rememberyourmission.com. And then a lot of the classes and workshops and groups that I do are on YouTube at the School of Multidimensional Intuition. We actually have a weekly show that just organically started. It kind of was born from me not being on other people's shows. I used to try to be on shows all the time and everybody would ignore me. And so at some point I was like, I'm going to make my own version of it. So last month we started doing a live show that happens every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And so we do this live show where I bring in other healers and people that are doing work, and we just talk about our process. And so you guys can find us on YouTube. And then we also have a kind of a training program. It's a monthly gathering thing that takes place through Patreon. It's called the Blue Flame Collective. And we just did our monthly meeting yesterday, actually. We did a really cool energy clearing process. And there's about 60 individuals that meet with us every month in the Patreon group. And we go through trainings. Sometimes we do interviews. Sometimes we do qigong. That's a thing we were doing earlier this year when I had space, when I had space and I could do it. So yeah, you can find us Patreon, YouTube, and on the website. So yeah.
Perfect. And I'm going to put that, I'm going to drop that Patreon link down.
Sorry
Yes.
Sorry to instantly interrupt. I know we're short on time, but one other thing, I do have a physical event coming up. It is from May 2nd through the 5th. And it's not one that I'm speaking at. It's important to mention that both me and my wife are going to be there doing sessions. And it's one of the only places that people can do in-person work with me. All the work I do is over Zoom, which honestly is kind of better. But for those that want to encounter us in the physical world and get a really incredible taste of just what's going on in this area, it is called the Secret Space Conference in Grafton, Illinois. People can check it out at secretspaceconference.info. There's a number of amazing speakers there talking about the secret space program and just all the stuff going on in that area of our realm. And so, yeah, we will be there in a physical way, just running support on this mission. So you guys can find us there.
Excellent. I will drop that down too. So those are both the Patreon and the Secret Space Conference is both. I just dropped those into the chat, live stream chat. And then Mr. Matthew, to put you on the spot entirely, you had said that you would do a little reading for the three of us. So Matthew, this is very indulgent, everyone, but if you're curious, hang out, because Matthew's going to pull a card for each and every one of us and give us little mini readings, which I'm totally excited about. All right.
Yeah, let's do it. So I guess that kind of reminds me of another thing. One of the cornerstone diagnostic methods and timeline viewing things I use is through a practice called multidimensional tarot. And the fun thing is, just yesterday, we announced our third multidimensional tarot class. It begins on May 22nd of this year. You guys can find it at rememberyourmission.com, but somehow it is the #1 most requested thing of anything I have ever done, which is crazy because people have written to me about it from all over the world. I never thought that would happen. People in France, Australia and stuff have been like, when are you going to do a tarot class? And I'm like, what? So we're doing it again. It starts May 22nd, but it's kind of like one of the primary methods I use for divination and just looking at stuff. And I say that very carefully because tarot has a lot of twists and turns. For some people, it's meaningless. For other people, it's profound. Everyone gets a little bit of an experience with it, and it's all about how it's used. And so that said, we will pull a quick card for everyone here. Who would like to go first?
Give Miss Angela. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, yeah, thank you. It actually, I need some sort of a buy-in. So that's why I'm like, hey, you go first. You make a choice. Excellent. And so what's the name that everyone knows you by, the name that you use the most?
Angela.
Okay, cool. So I do a call out in the beginning. I connect with the name. And so let's take a slow breath in as we honor each and every one of you, connecting with the mind, body, spirit complex known as Angela. Thank you, everyone assisting Angela at this stage of the journey. We're just looking for advice and understanding, just an important piece of information that needs to be made known at this stage of the journey. You'll see it with me together. I have no idea what it's going to be. Boom. Angela, you have received the 4 of Cups. Hopefully you guys can see this. It's not too blurry on your screen. What's the 4 of Cups? What's it all about? Well, right now it's this guy. It's actually you, Angela, sitting there in front of the tree, looking at the 3 cups in front of you. The 4 of Cups is a chapter of your life, or a moment in which you're meant to be in meditation. You're meant to be pondering. You're meant to be looking at the 3 cups in front of you and going, how do I fill those 3 cups? What goes in the 3 cups? Where did the 3 cups come from? Where's my 4th cup? This is the 4 of Cups, right? Where's the 4th cup in my life? Will I ever get it? What is my fourth cup? He notices eventually that it's right next to him. And what the Four of Cups is an indicator that you're meant to be in a state of prayer, meditation, planning, and pondering. It's an existential stage in which one will realize that many of the answers in their life have already been given. It's important to note one thing about Four of Cups. When we really look at him, we're like, he's just sitting there. Well, he's supposed to be. People understand that when the Four of Cups comes in your life, it might not necessarily be about direct action on the external plane. It's about understanding and weighing the options and viewing what's happening in his life and internally. And so it's a really powerful energy. Just in case you're wondering, what are the cups? In multidimensional tarot, the cups are our relationships, our emotions, our self-identity, kind of how you connect with the world emotionally, although there's other kind of flavors of that. But it's a really cool existential stage where many answers are given, provided you're willing to be silent and allow a process of realization. Eventually, Four of Cups will have big questions in its life, and this day comes where they're like, oh my God, it was right there the whole time. And so for those that have big questions, they've already been given to you. So anyway, I hope that finds you in some way.
It does.
Really
Absolutely.
good. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Any questions on that before we go forward?
I don't have any. It's very fitting.
Well, I hope it finds you well. Who is next?
Linda.
Me.
And so you go by Linda, right? That's the most common name. Okay, cool. Okay, well, so you already have a very different vibe. I feel the weightiness of the current moment. And so for those of you assisting with the mind, body, spirit complex known as Linda. Very different energy there. Good job. You are a true survivor. Well, okay, I'm going to go outside of the realm of tarot and just give you the energy body portion of it. For you, working with kidneys and earth star and root chakra stuff is going to help you rid and just kind of step out of a revolving chapter of some sort of dissonance or chaos in your life. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't have that much to do with you at this stage. It's like a reactionary phase and your body's holding certain frequencies that'll keep something revolving. It's like a revolving door is going to keep happening. It's actually a sign of great strength. It's a sign of incredible ability to sort of outlast and kind of just, persist in this life. And so kidney balance and earth star chakra balance are going to help you fundamentally alter just stuff right now in ways that might seem kind of woo and won't make sense in the moment, but you're getting a number of ideas in your mind's eye right now. And just so you know, you guys, the way many of our guides work is when we receive these cards, you'll get questions and you'll get this internalized signals and images and people. That's nearly always your guides going, it's this and it's that and it's this. And so the questions internally are the answers, but we'll do a quick card for Linda. Whoa, here it is. You got a 5 of Wands. Whoa, interesting energy. 5 of Wands. That's a very cool thing to have. And so when we see 5 of Wands, you'll see a bunch of people clashing, right? Or that looks like they're fighting. Or some people look at this and they're like, wait, it looks like they're dancing or they're practicing something. What are they really doing? Well, the 5 of Wands is an indicator of a chaotic physical or just a chaotic environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a battle, but sometimes we look at a 5 of Wands and we're like, are we fighting or are we dancing? We're not exactly sure. One thing we do know when we look at it is that you will notice that none of these people are actually hitting each other. They're all inserting themselves in very awkward ways and very awkward angles. And while no contact's actually happening, it's a chaotic scene. And so what do we do with a 5 of Wands in our life? We limit our influences. We limit our exposure to chaos. We start to simplify our physical environment. And the awkward thing about 5 of Wands, all the 5s in multidimensional tarot are illusionary energies that only last so long as our focus remains fixed on them. Meaning that the longer we dwell on a 5 of Swords, 5 of Cups, 5 of, whatever, Pentacles, the longer you'll remain sitting there going, wait a minute, are we fighting? Are we dancing? Who's that? Where's his wand coming from? Where's my wand? Am I the one on the top or am I the one on the bottom? It's like you'll constantly be jockeying for some sort of like a placement, trying to put yourself on top of something. And there really isn't any with Five of Wands. We're meant to pull ourselves out of it and look at it from a different perspective. And so once again, it's a sign, people that have big Five of Wands energy, they will tend to survive and persist through each and every interaction, no matter what, whether they're on the top or whether they're on the bottom, they just keep going. And so anyway, I hope it has some relevance to your current world.
More than you know, yes. and as you were talking earlier, when you were talking about the we would get signs, mine, I kept hearing fluttering heart. My heart's been fluttering for quite some time, but a lot recently, like constant.
Like a physical feeling where it's like,
oh yeah.
Oh man, okay, that's a really good piece of information that will, in some cases, not all, will correspond with not only the thymic chakra that I was talking about, which activates kind of like when we go through puberty and the thymus starts emitting all kinds of hormones. There's another thing that occurs as we go through the fourth density shift where the thymus reactivates. And so you'll feel this fluttering there. And what for some of us, it's the activity of energy that's gathered there, which usually will be covering up abilities, or it'll be emotions that we grab onto other people. And so you'll be holding and processing that on a really wild level while also activating sensitivity on another level. And then we also have another element of that, the fluttering or the heart movement, which has to do with the pericardium, which if anyone out there wants to study a channel in your body that has incredible impact on your intimacy, your love, your body image, how you receive love, how you connect with others, who you find attractive, the way you see yourself when you look in the mirror and the feelings you get, that's your pericardium. In Chinese medicine, they call it the guardian of the heart. And so it's just incredibly powerful. But yeah, it sounds like you're experiencing an activation or energy within those places.
Yeah, which is interesting because I decided to open it up. It's been shielded for quite a while.
Totally. Okay, I'll just add one other piece to that. You probably already know this, but there is an avenue through which you can release pericardium energy in your body, and it's your palm and your middle finger. This is the end of the pericardium channel. I think it's 7 and 8, or maybe it's 8 and 9. Yeah, I think it's 8 and 9. But as we learn to open that up and soften the heart, what you will find is that your ability to move chi energy through your hands increases exponentially, almost to the extent that I'm nearly positive we can cause a sensation to occur in your palm at this very moment. There it is. I dare see it. Yeah. Okay. There it is. And yeah, that's the pericardium. So yeah, no, that's, oh man, it's really cool because it'll change your ability to project energy, but it will also cause you to become more vulnerable. It's a weird thing. Like vulnerability comes in, but so does transmission. So anyway, watch out. I will keep on ranting.
And for those that couldn't see my face, yes, I could feel it going through my hands immediately.
That's literally you, by the way. Don't worry. That's got nothing to do with me. That's like in the moment, we'll sort of call out an energy center or a place. And for people that have an energy there, it's like instantly it'll turn on and you're like, whoa. Sometimes it's very small. So other people will be feeling it in their own way. But yeah, that's a real thing. Pericardium is incredible. But yeah, anyway, before I get stuck on that, we have one more reading we're going to do. And so what's the name you go by the most? Most people know you as Kat? Okay.
Yeah. Lord Catman. No, it's Kat.
Thank you. Thank you. For those of you assisting the mind-body-spirit complex known as Kat. Okay. This is a cheesy thing, but it feels like you have a direct tie to a version of yourself that may exist in what we would call Lemurian timelines, although I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. It might even be what some people would call an Atlantean era, although I guess we could say those were bazillion years apart. But it's like a very distinct, what we would call past self version of you, what we might even call like a robed being, a priestly type of a being. one of those beings that would go out onto the streets and sort of touch like the lepers and the people that were in a very, very difficult state. He would constantly go out and like connect with those that were suffering in a different way. And so for some reason, that aspect of you was shown to me instantly. Almost like a multidimensional social worker at one point. Yeah. But very, very multidimensional. Definitely not a third density version. You would choose the people. You would choose them and go find them and change the path of their life. It looks like in a couple of cases, you kind of took care of things for their family as well, much to your detriment. It was damaging to you. But it was a thing that you devoted yourself to. And so hold on to whatever part of that fits. It was just, it was like instantly there. And so some of it might not fit, which I always say with past life stuff, you know, everyone's viewing your field through a little crack. So it's like, they'll be like, well, it feels like this, but it's actually that. And so hold on to your version. But anyway, while we were saying that, I did accidentally pull your card already. And so usually I do it in front of everyone, but I'll just do it now. You got something awesome. You got judgment. Man, which people get weird when they see judgment. So don't worry if you're like, wait, what judgment? What does that have to do with anything? Judgment is a really powerful energy in the world of multidimensional tarot, because this is a forced transformation that will come about at various stages of your life through what we would call an ego death, a phoenix moment, a time in which you stand in judgment of all that you've become and all that you've experienced and all that you've learned. And judgment will make a choice to allow themselves to rebirth over and over and over again. Some people say judgment chooses the time and place in which they pass on from this world. And so people that get stuck in a judgment phase, it's cool because nothing will really kill you other than you. I know that's an awkward statement, but that's just how it is with judgment. But it allows you to transform yourself, your persona, your roles, your journey. People that have this just continue to persist because they're able to reinvent things in really magical ways. And so it also means that you're going to have just a different view of the world. You're going to be privy to a lot more information and a lot more truth. There's not much that you can hide from judgment. That's just the way that it goes. You're going to view every element of every situation. And the awkward thing is you might stand in judgment of it, although that's not the biggest energy in judgment. It's the transformation, the ability to transform others, ability to transform the self. And I will just add one of the phrases that I use with judgment in other situations. When judgment shows up as a force in your life, it's a little bit different than if you're embodying that as a representative. When it shows up as a force in your life, you may be in what we would call a forced transformation stage, where the tighter we cling on to old structures in our world, the more they come along and go, hey, Kat, I notice you're still clinging on to this and that. That's cool, but here, let me just rip, and they'll rip it out of your life, and you'll be like, and what happens is whatever you're willing to get rid of, you will get a new one. Judgment will replace things in your life, but it's at the cost of you letting go of something that you're clinging on to. And so it doesn't mean necessarily you're clinging on to anything. I'm not going to define you as such, but many people that will hold that frequency will find like, oh yeah, I was holding on to that. I was holding on to that. And when it was ripped away from me, a whole new process began. And so I would say judgment is one of the deepest energies that we can get in terms of self-exploration and self-knowledge. And the evidence for that is that they're constantly recycling. They always come back in another manner, and they have to go through the death cycle. But watch out, I'll keep on ranting on that. I hope some of that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Did that sound about right, Linda?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I could definitely attest to that for both of us. Very accurate. Kat's is spot on.
Thanks.
Thank
so
you.
is mine.
Absolutely. I hope it finds you well. And I always say this, sometimes it's a meaningless thing to say, but only hold what fits. Only hold the part that fits. Take everything with a grain of salt. As a person that does this every day, for better or worse, because just because you've done 5,000 readings didn't mean you do them well, and it didn't mean you did it in a really, powerful way. But I say take it all with a grain of salt. So yeah. I've
called Kat my psychic doula for a long time. But I actually like multidimensional social worker.
I like that. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I'll add that to my repertoire, my list of tags after my name. That's hysterical.
Yes.
I will say just one other thing. You do have a very unique ability in our sort of like the pre-talk that we had. I don't know if you guys know this. I was like, I just did all these readings and I was in this like, okay, let's talk, let's do this thing. And you had the ability to crack open areas of my life that I have never talked about in hardly anything on any lives. And it was like within 5 minutes, I was like, yeah, there's all these soulless beings and clones and all kinds of weird energy. And yeah, I'm, this and that. It was like you had the ability to just open up something. And I was like, wow, I'm talking about all these things that I had no idea were coming out of me. So that's a sign of incredible intuitive ability to like, what happens if we press this button? It's a very cool thing. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And I credit that in part just to being empathic, and I don't come with people and judgment to the card, even though my tatas and my cooch was exposed in that card, very intimidating. But like in terms of how I show up in the world, like I don't show up with judgment for people, and they just tend to spill their guts with me, and it's, they'll just tell me things. I'm like, okay, and it's like that's just something that's inherent with me. I think a lot of empaths have that as well. But yes, thank you so much, Matthew. Just thank you so much. Is there one last positive, uplifting, healing message that you'd like to share with us before we go into our closing?
I will make it really quick. I believe that if you are incarnated on this earth plane right now, whether you're one of the people that watches this broadcast or you hear the recording, understand that you are not a victim to these times. We chose to enter this world on expert settings, on the highest difficulty setting, because you can handle it. You are not a victim to this time. You have a mission here. You have an ability. And this is one of those many stages in the movie where some strange man knocks on your door. And they're like, hello, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we need you. Your world needs you. It's time to remember. And so, yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, I'm flipping us into Brady Bunch view. Miss Linda, would you start our gratitudes?
First, I want to thank Matthew for just such an amazing show. It's been a masterclass. You just gave us this amazing free masterclass. And the conversations on the side, again, thank you everyone for participating in that. Thank you, Kat, for bringing everything together, and Angela for bringing so much into the conversation. So much added to this. And also I want to thank everybody who has provided coffee for Third Eye Salon and helped support us in growing this channel. Would bring in such a different element, I think, than other groups, other things that we've had, bringing this collective together. Make sure that you go into the description box and check everything out. Check out Matthew and Angela's work. They're both amazing, as you can see. And I will turn it back over to Kat so he can tell us what we are going to see next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Linda. Yep, next week we have Jenna Layden, who is another ET contactee. I found her on Portal to Ascension. So she is another person who came from a very like normal life, right? Very was doing all the things she was supposed to do, and then had her awakening and had her contact experiences. So join our Facebook group so I'll be sharing her video there at the discovery video that I share with people when I bring them on. So join us in our Facebook group so we can connect there and we can talk about Jenna in the upcoming week. And then let us know in our conversations on Facebook what you loved about Matthew, what struck you, what you enjoyed, what turned your head, what turned you on. We'd love to hear that. And along those lines, hit the like button if you haven't already, because that really helps support us and reaching other people. Subscribe to our channel if you've not. Hit the notification bell. And again, thank you, absolutely everyone. What a blessing. This was such a fun ride, and I absolutely would love to have Matthew back on if he'll have us. So
yeah, thank you.
All right. Awesome. All right, everyone, take care. We'll see you next time. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Love you. Bye.